Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Buffalo Bills Center of the West. We're proud to present the McCracken Library, presenting another series in the exciting series of lectures by Bob Richard. Very pleased to see all you here today on this sunny afternoon, but I'm going to tell you that what you're about to get is going to be worth your while. Today we have a photographic tour of Yellowstone with Aubrey Haines. Aubrey Haines was Yellowstone's first historian, and today Bob has a special guest. He has special guest, retired Yellowstone Ranger, John Lounsbury. John grew up on a family farm in Michigan. He started his ranger career at Sequoia National Park in 1965. He worked at a bunch of other places, including the Everglades, the Smokies, Olympic, Lassen, and he came to Yellowstone in 1980, where he spent the next 22 years, retiring in the fall of 2002. He and his wife live in the Madison Valley, where they enjoy riding horses and driving a mule team. For Bob Richard, if you don't know, Bob Richard grew up on the Wapiti Valley on the Frost and Richard Ranch. He started his guiding career at the age of 10. When he was 11 or 12, his grandfather and dad left him alone on Trout Peak with a sack of pancake mix to cowboy alone for the summer. Bob was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot. In Vietnam, he was a coordinator for the Red Cross for service and relief activities in the Western U.S. for 21 years. He's written a series of books. He ran a tour program into Yellowstone Park for how long? Over 20 years. He's also written a series of books. We have one, which I have one in my hand here, and Bob is going to be signing those upstairs, so you're going to want to get your autographed copy of a piece of his oeuvre after the talk. I'd like to thank, we also have Mac Frost here. Mac Frost is a photographer extraordinaire and relative of Bob's in some manner or other, who's going to be helping out with the technical details. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Sam Hanna, our AV specialist. And with that, I give you Bob Richard.
Thank you, and thank you for being here today. Several guests, as they were coming in, said, how long is it? I said, we try to do 45 minutes, then questions and answers. If you need to leave early, please just slip out either side. We understand. And John and I tend to be a little long-winded, and so we may run over the 1 o'clock time. But those of you that need to leave, please do. And those of you stay will learn more from John than I. He was one of my teachers at one time. He and I would share his stories and my stories about Yellowstone, and then he brought Aubrey Haines that he's going to talk about. And we're going to spend time sharing some of the things that nobody knows about or has seen, and John and I both learned from Aubrey and his wife Wilma, who corrected Aubrey if he forgot something. She was a real asset, and a great story about how they met in Yellowstone. But we're going to get started. Let's go to the next one. These are books that Aubrey published, and I still use them as my favorite reference books. They're hard to find. And this is what he autographed in the one to me. And to Jack Richard's son, Bob, who is also a good friend of our precious Yellowstone. And he signed that when we spent a week with him on a bus and meals with him at the Lake Hotel. But John's going to tell you more about that. Let's look at Aubrey Haines next. Well, this is John and Lois. Lois is down here in the front. Takes good care of John, but she was also the medical administrator of Yellowstone Park for over 18 years. And then next to Lois is a young man by the name of Brad Ross, who was a protege of John's. And John brought him along from a seasonal ranger and taught him the right way to be one of the best rangers in Yellowstone. And he just retired as the district ranger of the lake area. and he's here to answer all the questions John and I can't. He's much younger and much brighter than we ever hoped to be, but I'm glad you're here. I see lots of other friends, and thank you for being here today. And we're ready. Oh, this is John, and one of our former Paul Hoffman that by an outhouse at Sylvan Lake Hotel. And we learned about that. It's a two-holer. It's still there. How many have been to that outhouse? Not very many, right? Well, those of you have been around a while. But it's a short walk over to see it and makes a good photograph. All right, John?
The outhouse is in the meadow by Sylvan Lake, and in the early 1900s, a guy, Tex Holm, got out of the Army up at Fort Yellowstone and started a lodge, which is the Cross Sabers Lodge as you go up to North Fork. And he had a stagecoach trip through the park for several years till they motorized, and they had a lodge in a meadow by Sylvan Lake, and they'd stay overnight there and then continue on the stagecoach. And the old privies for the lodge, there's a men's and a women's, are still there. And so it was kind of neat to show people there's still some remains of the old lodge in the meadow, and that's what that is. And Hoffman and I, and my wife and his wife, have the record. We rode around Hayden Valley one day, and we saw 10 grizzly bears in one day. Anyway, I enjoyed working with Paul.
He was our our executive officer for about 15 years. Really helped Cody. Next.
This is Aubrey Haines and his wife Wilma, and since I got you captive, I like to tell how I first got to know Aubrey. I always liked to ride my horse around some pretty country, and one day I was way down the southwest corner of Hayden Valley, and up on a ridge I saw a female grizzly bear with 2 cubs working along the ridge top. And geez, it was a nice day, and it was close to lunch, and it was a good distance, so I got off and tied the horse and got my lunch and binoculars, and I watched, and they worked along the ridge top, and they were flipping some stuff over, it looked like, and eating bugs. And I watched them for quite a while, and when they moved off and I finished lunch, I went up, and there was wooden fragments along the top of the ridge, and then about every 15 feet were some loops of wire, and I couldn't figure out. I thought, well, maybe I couldn't figure what it was. And so I asked some people, and finally an old friend, Geraldine Mernan, said, well, call Aubrey. And Aubrey had retired and was living in Bozeman. And so I called him up, and he was just delighted that I'd found it. He didn't think anybody would ever find it. And what it was, in 1894, a scout and a trooper caught a poacher, Ed Howell, up in Pelican Valley killing bison. And he got prosecuted, and there was a journalist from this magazine, Forest and Stream, predated Field and Stream, Emerson Ho, was out, and this is in the winter, and he took pictures of the poacher, and it went back to Washington, and the editor, George Grinnell, made a big deal, and we got the Lacey Act passed in like 6 weeks. Amazing. That's our best wildlife protection that we're still using, and we got a judge in Yellowstone. Well, the next year they wanted to do something to try and protect the last wild bison left in lower 48, and this George Bird Grinnell, according to Aubrey, talked around DC, and they got $3,000 from the Smithsonian, the National Zoo, which today 3,000 doesn't sound like big government budget, but back in 1895, that came, and Captain Anderson, the superintendent, military superintendent, found this spot in the southwest corner along Alum Creek where bison go between the Fire Hole and Hayden Valley. And guy, Uncle Billy Hofer, that figures in a lot, got some ranch kids and they built this fence. And the fence, I rode it, it's just about 2.5 miles, and they put 2 posts in the ground and put rails between like that, and then looped the wire around. Well, they took a team of horses and a mower back there, and they cut a bunch of marsh hay. They had a buck rake, and they had some hay stacks. And nearby, around the corner, is one of the real early Army snowshoe cabins built in 1890, and there's still a few remains of that. And so they chummed some hay in there, and they got about 20 bison, went in, and they closed the gate. And they spent the winter in there eating hay, and they were pretty happy. But then spring came, and the snow built up, and it covered up some of the gullies, and the bison just walked right up the hard snow over the fence and went on their way. So that was Yellowstone's first bison management. But the rest of the story, and I'm almost done, some folks put dairy cows up there. And they'd run in the spring about 120 dairy cows, keep them in that enclosure, and they'd milk them and take the milk down Nez Perce Creek to the Fountain Hotel, and down to the Lake Hotel, and to Canyon. And that lasted until I think 1918, when they motorized and refrigerated trucks could bring milk down from Livingston. And so that was the end of using the fence, but people, including me and Paul Shalary and Lee Wilslee, think probably, and we'll never know for sure, but probably when they were trailing the dairy cows in or out, one of them aborted a calf and had brucellosis, and a bison came by, licked the afterbirth. And we can't say for sure, but most likely that's where Yellowstone's bison got brucellosis. So anyway, that's the end of my story. And I got to know Aubrey quite well after that, and I'll quit with my stories.
This is breakfast at John Lois's house. Byron Price, who was here running the museum, and myself were invited as guests of John's and Aubrey to spend the next 5 days with them in a big bus touring Yellowstone and learning about things that we didn't know. And what you're going to see part of it today, but this is having breakfast with Lois. Aubrey and Wilma stayed at the Lake Hotel. And next, same one, there we go. This is a photograph next. This is the size of the hotel. It's the oldest hotel in the park. I have to say it's probably the most romantic. Speaking personally, my granddad asked my grandmother to marry him there. She was on a tour with Frost and Richard. I could name a couple hundred friends that met or got married there or started their relationship there. I renewed my vows there with my wife 14 years ago. And very special place. The foreground used to be the boat docks, and we'll see that in a few minutes next. Lake Ranger Station. John spent his time there. I spent a short period of time there as a horse ranger, as well as a ranger that wore all the hats. Next. Inside that building are the museums tied together with it. They reproduced my dad's photographs, about 20 of them, I think. Is that right, Brad? And Brad, who was the district ranger, got these put up in the ranger station. And if you pound on the door and somebody comes to the door, they say they're closed, they'll let you in to look at those photographs. And it's the early days in the lake area. And they're mostly my dad's photographs. But I always stop there, and they get a little aggravated, but they get used to me. and especially if I photograph them next to the photograph with me as a horse ranger. But next, that's one of the photographs that's there in the station. That's myself on Big Red. It was a Morgan Stallion. There's a book upstairs that tells you about how I met my wife in Yellowstone and gave her a choice of going to court or having dinner with me. And she looked at me, a nurse from Virginia, and she's, "Oh, I'm not stupid." And anyway, 4 months later, we were married. But this is the boat docks. This is Lake Lodge. It's still there. It's going to be serving meals shortly. It's a cafeteria style. There's nice bathrooms there. Next. This used to be Hamilton Stores. They lost the contract, and it's now called the Yellowstone General Stores. These are old buildings. They're historic places. Next. These are the sheds where the boats are stored in the winter, and the fish hatchery was right next to this. And they're still maintained. This is go to the next one. This is a fish pond that the Native Americans built, and they found netting where the Indians netted trout out of the lake. And when the lake is down in August or September, you can see this fish pond on your way to Bridge Bay. But as the lake goes up, there's 75 or 76 tributaries that come into Yellowstone Lake. And the lake fills up about 6 to 8 feet. Next. They dredged out Bridge Bay. It was a beautiful meadow, and it was the last of Mission 66 projects back in the 60s. I had gone off to the Marine Corps. Dad came up and photographed the dredges that dredged out that meadow and turned it into Bridge Bay. Next. This is after a light snowfall in the fall, and you can see the dredge across the bay and a cement mixer and all kinds of equipment. But when it snows up there, it sort of slows things down a bit. Next. This is after it was finished and completed with the boat docks, a boat coming out to go out in Yellowstone Lake, much more protected than when it was in front of Lake Hotel. And every year when I was doing tours, there are a family of otter that live on the boat docks and next to it. And if you're lucky and you go down there, you can show your guests Mama Otter and her babies. Anyway, there's lots of wildlife there. Next. This is getting ready to go out of Bridge Bay, and it turned into a nice bay. Next.
This is Aubrey on the left and a long-time boat ranger, Rick Fay, who was just a legend as a boat ranger. He's really, and I don't know, Brad, does he still come back and volunteer? Yeah. Anyway, that's Aubrey and Rick Fay. Okay, if we go back, that's our 32-foot rescue boat. It was made up in Canada by Mccracken Company, and we named it Robert E. Mon, which many of you remember Eastgate Ranger Bob Mon, who died in a really bad snowstorm on January 17th, Martin Luther King Day, and it was 2014, and it's just sad remembering he was in a whiteout and went off the road up near the top of Sylvan Pass. But Bob was a big, strong, reliable, sturdy guy, and this boat kind of matches that, so it seems like an appropriate name for it.
Byron Price from the museum here, and Aubrey Haines. In fact, Byron is going to be here next September. And we invited him to join us up here, and he couldn't make it. He had other commitments, but we'll see him in September. And we had a ball. We spent our nights with John and Lois, our breakfasts there, and all our dinners were with Aubrey and Wilma at the Lake Hotel. Next.
The guy on the left is named Geraldine Mernan, and he was a district ranger a long time. Came in 1964, and I'm guessing quite a few of you met Jerry over the years. He was just a legendary district ranger.
Safest man I ever went in the backcountry. He had everything on a saddle to make sure we were safe the whole time we were in the backcountry. We did many tours with Jerry. Next.
This is Aubrey and Wilma, his wife, and the story how he met Wilma, and she was the perfect wife, and they had 3 kids. Aubrey came back in 1945. First, a little bit about Aubrey. He was born in Portland, 1914. He went to University of Washington and got a forestry degree. He came to Yellowstone as a ranger in 1938. He worked right up till 1941, and then he went off in the war, and he was in the Army Corps of Engineers, and he helped build a road across Burma during the war. He came back in 1945, and he had some money. He said he'd saved up, and so he bought a brand new red convertible car. He said it was a flashy car. So he was at Mammoth, and he took the car one evening out towards Tower, and on his way back by Lava Creek, these 2 young women were walking along, and they stuck their thumb out, and he stopped and gave them a ride. And Wilma was the secretary for the chief of maintenance in Yellowstone. And I think she told Lois that Aubrey was so skinny because he'd gotten malaria in World War II that she felt so sorry she had to put some meat on his bones. And anyway, they got married, and they had a pretty good life together.
John, you better talk about this young lady, or maybe we could have Lois talk about it.
That's Jan Van Zura, formerly Kaminsky, who was Lois's head nurse at the hospital, and then married a guy named Boone Van Zura, who was one of my pretty darn good rangers, so that was convenient.
Next. This is John and Byron as we're coming out of Bridge Bay. Next. This is on the boat with John and Aubrey as we're headed out. Next. That's the only photograph you'll find me in. I just wanted people to know I was on the trip. Next. That's a classic photograph. Aubrey was so thrilled to be with us and be invited by John, and everybody tried to make it happen. He never stopped talking. At dinner, when we were eating dinners with him, and there were 6 or 8 of us every night, he never ate his dinners. And I said, Aubrey, why aren't you eating? He says, this is my last trip to Yellowstone, and I'm so happy to tell you about it and share with you my Yellowstone and what it means to me. He says, I can eat any time. And 6 months later, he died of cancer. But he had the best week with us, and as we did with him. Next. This is Byron, and over the top of John's and Byron's head is the ribs and the drive line of the EC Waters. And John, why don't you touch on that?
He was a concessionaire, had the boat operation. He had a store next to the Lake Hotel. And he was kind of a creepy guy. He can't say anything good about him. And he had a steamboat called the Zilla that would go down to West Thumb, pick up the stagecoach passengers and bring them back to in front of the Lake Hotel. And they'd stop out on Dot Island where he had some bison and some elk. And he didn't feed them. They were in terrible conditions. And he wasn't a very nice man. And he got this new boat that was quite a bit bigger, and he named it the E.C. Waters after himself. And they put it down in the southeast corner of Stevenson Island because he couldn't get the Park Service and some higher up government to give him permission to haul passengers. And it sat there, and the wind shoved it up on shore, and it was a nuisance. And in the 20s, apparently they had a lot of moonshine parties and things like that out there. So in 1930, the winter keeper at the Lake Hotel and 2 rangers skied out there, I think it was March, with a can of kerosene, and they doused it and they burned it to the ground. To the water line, excuse me. And what you see there are the ribs and some of the machinery that's left. And a story, some of you, Bob I know, knows a man that retired here in Cody named Ted Oxton. And I got a call from superintendent one day saying, hey, get all spiffied up and go down to the Cody Episcopal Church, and I want you to go to a funeral for an old-time Yellowstone Ranger. And that was Ted Oxton right across the street. Well, he wasn't even involved with burning the boat. He was gone somewhere, but they laid it on him, and he had to pay a $500 fine in 1930. That'd make a guy squeal even today. And they shipped him off to Mount McKinley and I think later Death Valley. And the moral to that I always felt was, you can be the Lake District Ranger and innocent doing good, and they'll still screw you over. So that's the Ted Oxton story, and that's the remains out there of the E.C. Waters. It's just there.
It's still there. Next. This is John with Stevenson behind, and if you look over to the right, you can see Lake Hotel. A favorite place of mine. We used to have picnic tables out there, fry fish there, and it was just a great place. I have photographs in my book with Admiral Nimitz swimming in this bay, catching trout there, and having a fish fry there, and that's in my Nimitz book that's upstairs. Next. There you can see part of the ribs again. Next. There, that shows you the drive line, the transmission, going back to where the prop has since disappeared.
The anchor is in the parking area down at Bridge Bay Marina over to the side. That's one of the pieces that somehow got brought out from.
Next. John's putting his mic down. This is on the South Gate Road, down on the Lewis River at the end of the meadows. And we asked Aubrey about this, and Jerry Mernan says, I'll show you where it is. And it's a survey marker that was done in 1890. And it's right next to the road. So we stopped the bus, took about 45, 50 people and walked down to look at this survey marker. Next. And Aubrey explained what it was and what had been put there for, and said they're all over the park. And we all listened carefully when he shared the history of these things. John?
We're
Next.
talking about this trip, and
Next.
I can flesh that out. I got to know Aubrey, we became good friends, and maybe the seed for this in the early 1990s. The guy ran the Yellowstone Institute named Rick Reese, and Aubrey and I talked him into having a class at the Yellowstone Institute on history. So for like 3 years, I think Aubrey would teach it, and we wired it. They had this little bus. They had like 12, 14 people. So I was the bus driver. I think Rick Reese figured the Rangers wouldn't check my bus driver credentials too close. So anyway, I got away with it. So we did those trips for like 3 years, and I think that was the beginning. And later on, I'll jump ahead if I can. Maybe this makes sense. Couple times we worked out for Aubrey coming up and get some awards. And by that time, Aubrey had moved down to Tucson, where his two sons still live. And the spring of 2000, I was getting towards the tail end of my time in Yellowstone. And Lois and I were going to go down to Tucson and stay with Aubrey and Wilma. And he had a trip all planned. And boy, last minute, I think we had our suitcases packed. We were going to drive down the next day. He called and had to cancel it because of health considerations. And I figured that was kind of serious. And so I did a little checking and I talked to Wilma. And the idea kind of came about. I said, do you think you can do one last trip up here to Yellowstone? He said, you bet. And Wilma said, go for it, John. And so I talked to our superintendent. I'll jumping ahead here, but and the head of the concessions, Jim Mccaleb, and we got this trip put together for the summer. And we had one of the big buses, and this is the bus driver, Leslie Quinn. I had a run-in with him early. He was driving a bus at Lake Junction. They had traffic backed up for 100 yards. And I was out jogging, and I came up and said, hey, can you pull up there? You're causing a big problem. And he kind of went. And I was in my jogging clothes, didn't tell him who I was. Well, he went up the road a little ways, but one of my best rangers, Mary Tabor, came along right then. And I waved her over, and we had a talk with Leslie up the road, and I cited him into court so he could explain to the judge his driving behavior. And later we got to actually be pretty good friends, and he's quite a historian along with his wife.
All right, just go back for just a minute. Ruth is the head of the people that give tours at Old Faithful Inn. She's written a book on it. And if you get to Old Faithful, either take her tour or pick up her book. It's well worth the time that you take there. All right, next. This is the superintendent's secretary, Jan Lay. She was a favorite of John's and mine because we could always find out where the superintendent was, what he was doing through Jan, and she got to go on the trip for a day with us. And here she was being smart, and I took her picture. She says, is that Old Faithful? Next. This is Wilma and Aubrey. Next. Old Faithful. Next. There's several clocks around in the lodge and the hotel, and doing tours for right at 50 years in Yellowstone. I always unloaded my guests at the inn, went in, checked the clocks, and then told them 10 minutes after the eruption and what it was that I would pick them up in front of the inn. But I depended on these clocks. And if they had new young rangers, seasonals coming in, and they set the clocks, they weren't quite as accurate as they should have been. Of course, geology changes that too. Next. This is the Old Faithful Inn. And in the earthquake in '59, the chimney in the back that you see the logs built around toppled over and fell into the dining room at 11:30 at night. Next. This is attached to the fireplace in the inn, and you can't really see it, but if you'll point down at the bottom of the log, back up just a little bit, right in there, there's a date of 1904 when they put it in there. And it's still there. If you ever walk around, there are 8 fireplaces. Next, in this fireplace, there's 4 corner ones and the large ones. And after the earthquake, only about 3 of the fireplaces work. But they still take the chill off early in the mornings when they build a fire there. Next. We went on from there to Fountain Lake Drive and stopped there next. Go ahead.
This is Jim Mccaleb, and he headed concession Xanterra, and he's been retired now, but he was a big help. He jumped into this project, and he's the one that pushed the buttons that we got the bus and the bus driver, and he also had the best rooms at the Old Faithful Inn and Lake Hotel and Mammoth Hotel for Aubrey and Wilman to stay. So he gets a couple gold stars for all that. And this is Lee Wilslee, another one of my young hires like Brad. It turned out pretty good. He was a ranger for me at Canyon. And then he left and went back to graduate school and became a park historian. I have to say he's probably a better historian than he was a ranger. Anyway, he's retired now. God, they're all getting old. This is the grave of Maddie Caulder. And her husband, E.C. Culver, was a winter keeper, and there was an old, they say hotel, it was just a shack that was across the fire hole from Nez Perce Creek in the Fountain Flat area. And a mail route went through there for a year or two, and it didn't amount to much. But anyway, he was the winter keeper, and I think it was 1888, his wife, and she was 32 years old, Maddie, died late winter. It was March something. There was a soldier station, there was back then, over across the river at Nez Perce Creek, and they took 2 empty barrels because they couldn't dig a grave, and they cut the ends out of 2 barrels and put her in there, and I guess a lot of ice. And then in the spring, they did bury her here, and there's a little headstone. And the wife of the concessioner, I'm having a senior moment on her name. Anyway, she arranged to have this grave marked with a fence around it. And one of, I don't know if it still goes on, but in the spring, about this time of year, flowers are put on that grave. And we don't know who, and we don't bother him. But anyway, the daughter went to an aunt, and she died as a teenager, and he went down to Gardner, and he was the postmaster and some other stuff. And just one of the saddest stories that people in Gardner never brought up about the death of his wife and later his daughter. And that's Dr. Mary Marr, Buffalo Mary. Mary came to Yellowstone, right after the Stone Age, I think, and she was an SCA volunteer, and then later went on to grad school. She got her PhD at Berkeley under Starker Leopold, Aldo Leopold's son, and she studied the bison in Yellowstone her whole career. And she's still around. She's still up in Cinnabar Basin. You don't want to mess with Mary Marr.
We moved up to Norris Junction, and this is the old bridge crossing, crossing the river there. And next, this is the soldier station. In Byron, they had converted this to a museum, and Aubrey really wasn't very happy about that. But we went over and visited it, and it's still standing there. Next. That's looking across the creek at it. Next. This is, go ahead, John.
In the 1880s, they built a hotel just west of the soldier station, got it all ready to go the next summer, and it was just about this time of the year crew came in to get it going, and they built a fire in the kitchen, and they hadn't hooked up the stovepipe to go out the chimney, and it burned to the ground. It never had a guest, and there's still old bricks and stuff left in the meadow if you walk around. But Aubrey gave the story of that. Norris had a history of burning down hotels.
It was the 4th hotel at Norris. At one time, I've been told there were 50 hotels in the park, and most of them burned down. Next. Aubrey sharing with us the history. Next. Then we went over to the Norris picnic ground for lunch. And again, Aubrey didn't eat, but he sure shared the stories with us. Next. Then we went up and Mike Finley came out of his office, superintendent of the park, and Aubrey, and they spent a few minutes visiting and talking about the soldiers' buildings. And of course, we were all gathered around taking in the information. Next. Then we went from there across the top past Lava Creek, the petrified tree, and then we came over to Tower, and we're at Tower here. John?
The woman on the right's Elaine Hale, and she was our park archaeologist.
Next.
That's Jerry Mernan again.
Next. Tower Falls. Next. And then we moved up over Dunraven and down, and this is the Upper Falls. And go ahead, John.
That bridge back behind is not Chittenden Bridge. That's the old Canyon Bridge, which they...
And that doesn't cross the river.
No, it just crosses a gully. They spent almost a whole year's road improvement money building kind of a... It's a nice bridge. It's still there. We used to do our climbing, rappelling and stuff off of it because it was pretty solid.
Did you do any bungee jumping? Did you bungee jump?
No, never did that. Weren't that dumb.
Next.
No.
Next.
This is a tree I found poking around. It's opposite the brink of the Upper Falls trail and parking lot and stuff. It's on the other side, not too far from Uncle Tom's parking lot. Anyway, it's an old tree right down by the falls that I found, and is one of the few things I got to show Aubrey that he didn't know about. That didn't happen very often, but this is one they think, they don't know.
It carved in the lower part is 1871, and the names of a couple of the people that were in the Hayden party. I don't think we've taken Brad down there, have we? We better do that before we get too old. They have it barriered off so nobody goes there, but John just moves the barrier and we follow John and we know we're safe. But the superintendent wanted to have us take him down there, and I never found time, neither did John. I think we were really afraid that he was going to cut the tree down and put it up at Gardner and put it in the archives, but it's still growing, and it's kind of fun to know it's there. Next. This is the Lower Falls from Lookout Point. Next. This is a couple from Cody. They engaged me with the VFW to take the flight leader of the Blue Angels on a tour with his wife of Yellowstone. And I love the color of their shirts, and it was over the 4th of July, and a special trip with a man that flew the A4, which I had some time in, and talk story and show them all of Yellowstone. Next. John?
This, probably people don't know what the hell that is. In Canyon down in Cascade Creek, Canyon had 2 water systems in early days. These are early 1900s. One was the concession that took care of the hotel, and then there was a government system down in Cascade Creek. And the Army Corps of Engineers put this in, and these are called ram pumps. And you'll see another picture. The water comes down, and what these do, they kind of exchange water velocity with pressure, and they pump the water from these ram pumps up to the top of the bank where there's still some remains. These are some of the pipes coming down from the dam. And it served, there was a lot of stuff down by the brink of the upper falls and below that. And this served that whole water system, and some of the remains are still down in there. Yeah, a lot of old stuff we still need to clean up in Yellowstone.
Byron took a great interest in this. This is, go ahead.
Oh, that's Dragon's Mouth.
That's Dragon's Mouth. This is after we went through the Lamar. We also took time to go up to the old bear dump in Hayden Valley on Trot Creek. And this we couldn't believe it was still leaking garbage from that dump, and animals were still going in and digging around in it. And I guess it's still leaking, and they haven't made a decision how they're going to get rid of the piles and piles of garbage that were dumped there back in the 30s or 40s, wasn't it?
The quick boring thing is after they had these early incinerators, and they'd take the garbage cans and burn all that trash. But after World War II, the visitation just kept going up, and the incinerators couldn't keep up. So I think it was 1951, they started taking all the garbage from the hotels and campgrounds up Trout Creek and just dumped it. And they closed the area all around that so visitors didn't wander in. And a lot of nights, I guess old timers have said that you see 50 or 60 or more grizzly bears eating the garbage there at the Trout Creek dump. And a couple brothers, Frank and John Craighead, did a lot of their research with telemetry collars and darting bears up there. Then in 1968, after a couple women were killed one night at the glacier, the Park Service kind of, I guess, it was a watershed for bear management. Anyway, they stopped dumping out in Trout Creek. In '69, they imperfectly tried to clean it all up. But even in my time there, I'd see where bears would come in and dig down. And what's I've flown over it a couple times in a helicopter, and the dump looks like the hub of a wagon wheel, and you can still see these trails to the timber islands around it that look like spokes where bears will come from their day beds in and feed on the garbage, and you can still see those old bear trails.
John came much later, but when I was a ranger, our evening entertainment, because we didn't have TV, is we'd drive out in the patrol car and go through the lock gate and take our wives, and we'd drive out and watch the bears come in on the trails and the sows digging in the cans and the garbage. And if a cub had come over, she'd swat the cub and send him tumbling. And then we had Ingomar and Scarface, two big boars, and they'd stand on their hind legs and slap each other, just like a boxing match. And that's our evening entertainment in Yellowstone as a ranger. Next. This is the mud volcano, which is at the lower end of the Hayden Valley. Next. This is Fishing Bridge. The boat docks down there, and I used to rent a boat and go out and fish right there. Put my oldest boy in a cradle board and a life jacket. My wife was there with me, and we'd catch a few fish, turn them back, and save one for dinner. And next. This is going towards the East Gate. And this is the Corkscrew Bridge of today. And I actually, before I became a ranger and didn't know better, drove my Jeep and parked it up on top of that road. There was no barrier, and I kind of cherished that, having the last vehicle on top of the Corkscrew Bridge. And the books that we're selling up above in the bookstore show the Corkscrew Bridge when it was a wooden bridge, and it was designed to gain altitude and be easier on horses climbing up over Sylvan Pass, which was at 8,500 feet. Next. This man was 95 years old, and my son took him on the old road all the way down the bottom of the Middle Fork to the East Gate, and they spent all day hiking. They only ran into 2 grizzly bears, but they went one way and they went the other. And there's a date up there that said that that was built in 1919. Next. Another shot. Next. This is Sylvan Pass. A little bit of snow, quite a bit of snow. Next. This one I'll let John talk about.
The guy on the left is Art Jawad, who is one of the best rangers we ever had up at the East Gate. And he still comes back and visits Brad, and he's around. And that's the 105 howitzer, one of them that we use up on Sylvan. And Brad here kind of came after me running the avalanche program. And, you know, it works pretty good. We haven't killed anybody up there recently, so.
John invited me up one winter day, and it's the only time I've ever felt safe around the 105 howitzer. In South Asia, it was not comfortable when they were going off. We shot 29 rounds, 28 of them were shot into the opposite hillside, caused some avalanches, and one went over the top. And I looked at John and I said, there wasn't enough powder to reach Mammoth. And he just shook his head and he says, no, Bob, you're right, there wasn't enough. But anyway, you count the seconds and you have a pretty good idea that it landed in Pelican Valley. But they're very careful with the powder and the amount of powder to just send the high explosive shells into the opposite hill to stop the avalanches. Next. Sylvan Lake, early evening with top-notch peak, and Brad always tells me about taking his boys and skiing up there around top-notch peak. I don't know where he finds the energy, but his boys keep him on skis a lot. Next. Beckler. Nobody knows about Beckler, but Aubrey told us about Beckler Soldier Station. Next. And this was built, I think, in 1911, if I remember right. And I've gone down there several times. One of my favorite places. Separate entrance, and you have to go around through Idaho to get there, or you can cut across underneath the south gate at, there's, what's the name of it? Flag Ranch. And some of the road has corduroy logs that are rotting, but it's a great trip. Next. This is John. I went with John Mernan and Bob Smith, the volcanologist in Yellowstone, and we did pack trips in the backcountry. Those are for another day and another story, but lots of stories, and John always took the oldest ranger that would still ride a horse. Bob, what was Bob's? Murphy was 83. We put him on a horse and went up the Lamar and came out through Pelican Valley. And John put him on a gentle horse, and Bob would go to sleep on the horse. And he'd start leaning, and the horse would move over and catch him. And then he'd lean the other way, and the horse would move over. And I'd say, John, we got to stop. And so we'd stop, wake Bob up, and get some water in him, and then we continued down the trail. But after a couple of drinks at night and dinner, we heard some of the best stories of when he was a ranger back in the 30s. Next. Go ahead. You want to add something?
One of my best memories with this Bob Murphy, who I got to know, the next year I worked out taking him into thoroughfare. He was 84 years old, and one night I cooked his good Dutch oven dinner, and a couple game wardens from the nearby cabin came, and a Forest Service guy, and Jerry Mernan was there. It was Jerry Mernan's last trip into thoroughfare, and after dinner we had a few drinks, and thoroughfare has the best collection of old log books of all the Park Service cabins. And I brought out the log book of Bob Murphy's first visit into thoroughfare. I think it was 1951. And opened it up and he read it. And there wasn't a dry eye on the porch. You know, everybody seeing Bob read his own writing about his first trip into thoroughfare. And that was his last trip. So.
Okay, does anybody know what the name of this mountain is? This is Mount Sheridan. I put it in here because I took it last week. I was coming out of the park on a bus, and I photographed that through the window with the ice going out. The lake is still. Look at how quiet it is. That's the only time I like to go out on that lake, is when it was like that. But that has become one of my favorite photographs. And that's Mount Sheridan across the lake from Mary Bay. And with that, next, this is the end of our presentation. We have a couple of minutes for questions, and if you need to leave, please feel free to leave. John and Brad are here, and Lois is here to answer any questions too. She said, I'd rather not, but if you have some questions, please visit with her. She ran the medical facilities in the park for the Cody Hospital for over 18 years in all the different sites in the park.
Any questions for Bob, John, or others? Yes, sir. What is the time lapse on the geyser going off?
When I was a ranger, it went off every 60, 61 minutes. Today, because of earthquakes, and they change every year, and last year it was about an hour and a half, but it varies. But that's why you check the clock to know. You can go on to your phone app and it'll tell you approximately when the last eruption was, when the next. But it's varying, and it's not really as accurate as it used to be. I got in trouble with the superintendent because I was out giving the naturalist talk, and a friend of mine that was off duty came out with a steel wheel and a pipe coming out and put it down next to me, and he started turning the wheel as it was throwing up a little bit of water, and then he wound it up and the geyser went off, and we thought it was pretty funny, and everybody clapped, and I says, he's pretty good at that. I'm glad he came out. And we forgot all about it. A month later, we were in Superintendent Garrison's office, and he shows us this letter from a woman that said, Yellowstone's nothing but a big fake. And we sat there the rest of the day writing letters to her, and he had a stack that high. And he says, well, it's time for me to go home and have dinner. He said, just leave them there, and I'll pick out the one to send to her. And he said, I don't want you here again. And we went back to Old Faithful, and we did not do that again. All right, thank you. Yes.
One more. Have you ever heard of the Square G Ranch?
No, have not. I'm sorry. John had one more thing to add.
I guess this trip came off really well. Aubrey just got stronger. He had done a lot of work with his notes, but this trip was midsummer, and he went downhill pretty fast after that, and died in September. And I got the honor, I think it's an honor, they sent me Yellowstone down to represent the park at his funeral. and a lot of old timers are there. But the most meaningful thing, as I was getting ready to leave for the airport, Wilma came up and she said, John, said that trip that you worked out for Yellowstone bought Aubrey a couple more months of living. He was so looking forward to his last trip to Yellowstone, and you bought him a couple more months.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. John and Brad will be here. I'm going to go upstairs and sign some books. But thank you for supporting us and being here.